Welcome and good morning. It is so important for you to feel you belong here. We're going to start with the welcome, then we'll have announcements, and then the chalice lighting. We offer these opening welcome words from Israel Zangwill. Come into this circle of love and justice. Come into this community of mercy, holiness, and health. Come and you shall know peace and joy. And you are welcome here, no matter who you are, who you love, how you self-identify. We welcome you if you join us today for the very first time, or if you have worshiped here many times before and even generations before. Welcome to each one of you. Our minister is Reverend Emily Bruce, who is out of state with her family today. So leading the service this morning is our community minister, Reverend Judy Campbell. My name is Joan, and I will be assisting as her worship associate. So now let us gather together, our hearts alive with hope that here we may be truly seen. The chalice lighting words come from the Oberlin UU Fellowship of Oberlin, Ohio. We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for each other, and faith in ourselves. Also, to be welcoming to whomever we meet and kind to all living creatures. So gather around this light of hope as we share this time together.
Before we sing our opening hymn this morning, I wonder if there are any announcements that need to be shared with the community. It's not normal to be quiet in here. However, let us sing our opening hymn. Break Not the Circle, number 323.
Stars
Please be seated. May we join together in a time of silence where we hold those joys and concerns and our hopes and our fears, our anticipations and our dreads. Just hold them tightly and see where they touch you. I cannot tell your story. I can only tell you mine. I cannot know your mystery and only mine in time. I cannot write your sonnet. I can only read my own. I cannot live your sorrow. I cannot stop your pain. I can only stand beside you and wait to hope again. I cannot quell your hidden fears. I can only face my own. I can never birth your child or find your answer or meet your God. I cannot weep your tears. But to stand in truth of knowing of who I am and why, to greet my inner pain as friend, to own my fear and cry, then I can justly stand with you. I can hold your hand in mine. In honesty, I can share your thoughts, your mystery, your time. I cannot take your love, my friend. I can only give you mine. I cannot give you God, my friend. That truth is yours to find. Amen. And now I would ask that you share in the good works of this church by digging in your pockets and take note of the fact that I did not forget the offertory.
The Myth of Tribalism by Dominic Parker and J. Van Bavel. By now, even people who differ on nearly all issues seem to agree on at least one thing. American politics has become riven by tribal conflict. When people use the term tribalism, they are usually aiming to capture a toxic dynamic in collective life, such as the one that characterizes much of contemporary American politics. The power of group norms has long been recognized in other domains. For example, young people's drug and alcohol use or risky sexual behavior is heavily influenced by what they believe their peers do. Following the invasion and then defeat of ISIS in northern Iraq, the Christian and Muslim communities living there were left deeply divided. But they had something in common: a passion for soccer. In an extraordinary recent experiment, the political scientist Salma Musa recruited amateur Christian soccer teams to join a new league. She arranged for half of the teams to remain all Christian, while the other half were joined by Muslim players. Playing together for a season with Muslim teammates made the Christian players express more inclusive attitudes. Compared with those on homogeneous teams, the Christians on religiously mixed teams were more prepared to train with Muslims in the future, vote for a Muslim player to win a prize, and sign up for a similar cross-religion experience the following season. The benefits appeared to be particularly pronounced for players on winning teams. All of this contradicts commonly held notions about the tribal nature of group psychology. What many people call tribalism is tragically prevalent. It is not inevitable. It's a function of group norms. But the constant invocation of tribalism may create a self-fulfilling prophecy. People come to distrust other groups and falsely believe they need to discriminate against outsiders or suppress dissenters to maintain their status within their own group. Understanding how group identities combine with norms to shape human behavior also empowers people, and especially leaders, to focus more on cultivating healthy norms within their group, rather than assuming that groups will slide into hostility and insularity. We humans can and should hold ourselves to higher standards.
Amen. I've titled my talk this morning, Tribalism, Inclusion, Beloved Community, and Hypocrisy. What many people call tribalism is tragically prevalent, but it is not inevitable. It's a predictable function of the development of group norms and how we allow ourselves to be directed or governed by those norms. So what is it exactly that defines us? And what is the communal characteristics or shared value of them? And when does it get nasty? When does the beloved community become the tribe? And where is the tipping point when our core values become so aligned with the values of the espoused by the tribe that we cease thinking for ourselves? But the constant invocation of tribalism may create a self-fulfilling prophecy, just as Joan said. People come to distrust other groups and falsely believe they need to discriminate against outsiders or suppress dissenters to maintain their status within the group. In other words, is the use and overuse of the term tribalism actually creating its own breeding ground? Quoting the words again that Joan read earlier, understanding how group identities combine with norms to shape human behavior also empowers people, especially leaders, to focus on cultivating healthy norms within the group. In other words, the development of a strong group and group identity can be a positive force. Unitarian Universalism, for example, and its 7 principles of right relationship with the earth and one another. We espouse those as our group norms. Almost all of us can say we are a part of or belong to something, to many things, really. Think about it. You belong to a church, you belong to a social group. Some of you in here belong to a band or a quintet, nice quintet, a social action committee, a gardening club, a writing group, a sports team, the Friday night regulars at the local watering hole or coffee shop. And it's not uncommon for these groups or circles to overlap. Like-minded people and all that sort of thing. Birds of a feather like to stick together. Take a minute and think about how many circles of belonging you have in your life. Just think about it. Just take a second. Think of all of those interactions. Choir, military, veterans, craft groups, family, of course, Mayflower descendants. Conversely, we know loneliness kills, and solitary confinement is a particularly cruel form of torture. The Amish practice of shunning is the worst punishment the group can impose on a member who breaks the rules. Total isolation and shame. You're an outcast. Part of the devastation of COVID was the isolation. Belonging, being connected, being part of something, needing to be part of something, is a good and very human thing to do. We humans are pack animals. We are by nature community-oriented and tribally oriented. It's how we've survived over all of these years, and there's a lot of them. But when does "these are my people and I am safe and happy here" turn into "these are my people and everything that is not my people is bad"? To "everything that is not in my tribe or my pack is to be suspect, and then reviled, and then attacked, and then eventually eliminated." The word tribalism is getting a lot of attention these days, most particularly in the political sense. More and more, it would appear that the importance of party unity and cohesion, with the ongoing goal of re-election, comes first, and anything else, like working for the good of the people, seems to be running a weak second on both sides of the aisle. At the same time, we all know there's strength in numbers, and a burden shared is half as heavy as one carried alone. So, beloved religious community is good. Working towards a common goal is good. But is circling the wagons, putting up walls, and making enemies of outsiders in fear-driven self-protection, is that bad? No, it's not inherently bad. It's a community survival technique when humans feel threatened, and it works. The question is, when and how and why does working together for the common good cross the line into my way or the highway? When does stereotyping and name calling across the line to death threats, assassination, and political coup? It would appear that the space between the two is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and the space for any meaningful dialogue between the two armed camps is fast disappearing. What is us is good. What is not us is bad and could be bad. Very, very bad. Better shoot first and ask questions later. Long ago and far away on the island of Martha's Vineyard, I preached a sermon on hypocrisy. Yes, you heard me, hypocrisy. It was prompted by two events. One was that of one of the very liberal-minded parishioners, had gotten up and lighted a candle of concern, only to go off on a political rant against everything she thought was wrong with the country, the church, the island, and in general, anything driven by conservative thinking. The other, which was for me far more serious, was that a couple of the more conservative members, politically and theologically, and no, conservative is not a four-letter word, came to me in private to tell me they were beginning to feel uncomfortable and even unwelcome in the church they'd attended and supported all of their lives. That they were almost ashamed to admit they liked to hear the Lord's Prayer and the odd Bible verse. And despite the 7 principles, they also still believed in practicing the golden rule. When did it, they asked me, did it become a UU sin to be either Christian or Christian leaning in your personal theology and or a practicing political conservative? They complained that too many within the congregation were making broad assumptions, that is a 4-letter word, about the mindset of everyone in the congregation. That consciously or unconsciously, these people were making an outcast of anyone who dared voice anything other than what the majority of them considered to be their personal gospel. After any number of meetings, and you know what church decision-making is like, we came to the understanding that a church worship service was not a political or theological ranting station, and I would let that be known. Speak about policy, speak about your own beliefs, of course. Attack someone else? No. My opening words that following Sunday were, in fact, a warning. Good morning, my friends, I said. It's only fair to warn you that some of you will not like what I am about to say. And you still have time to leave. Of course, no one left. Who would miss a chance to hear something controversial, offensive, maybe even juicy? Everyone stayed put. And I began to talk about hypocrisy, starting with my own and our own awareness of it. And this is not because I'm an egocentric narcissist, but because I believe that any of us who get up and pontificate the way clergy do need to examine ourselves first. And then, as I did, and I am doing now, to a large extent, preach to the choir. And hope somebody is listening. Here goes. UUs make a business of being inclusive. It's in our principles. This is supposed to be a place where everyone is welcome, where everyone is supported in their own personal theology, lifestyle, and quest for truth. That's what we signed on to and came into. And of course, they're all. So I asked my good Martha's Vineyard folks if they would have any trouble welcoming my openly gay friend, Andy. Remember, this was over 20 years ago, and not as many people were safely out back then in those dark ages, and rainbow flags flying outside churches were few and far between. Would they accept and welcome him, I asked? Of course they would, with open arms. Come to us, be one of us. We will love you for who you are. Lots more, head nodding. And then I said, would you welcome him so gladly, knowing he is the president of the South Shore chapter of the arch-conservative Log Cabin Republicans? The room went dead silent. And then I went on to say, biting my nails where they couldn't see me, if you can't welcome gay and arch-conservative in the same person, is that conditional acceptance? Is that setting standards for inclusion? Gay, okay. Gay and conservative, not so much. I had just crossed a very dangerous line. I'd gone behind the comfortable facade of liberal knee-jerk thinking and called them to personal account. Was their liberal thinking maybe not so inclusive after all? And maybe, just maybe, a little self-examination was in order? Don't get me wrong. I am not trashing the NV population, particularly after having them have a whole bunch of migrants, unceremoniously dumped in their airport. They did praises all over the place for that. But on that particular Sunday morning, I did call this congregation to account. At the end of the service, no, I was not fired on the spot. I went back to the church, to the back of the church to greet the Sunday crowd and waited for the axe to fall. One of the very men who had earlier expressed his discomfort came up to shake my hand. And then still holding my hand, I'm thinking, hey, here it comes. And then still holding my hand, he said in a loud, clear voice, Reverend Judy, you were right. I really didn't like that sermon. And then he added, but I really needed to hear it. So thank you for being brave enough to give it. Whew. In the article that Joan read earlier this morning, the authors talk about the word and the concept of tribalism and how of late it's getting a very bad name. It's a conundrum, really. Tribalism, wanting to belong to something, be part of something, wanting to feel safe and included in the group, the community, the circle, the inner circle even, is wonderfully humanly human. We get so much more done if we work as a team than if we try to do it all on our own. It's when the comfortable circle of fellowship and belonging becomes intractable, rigid and controlling of thought, word, and deed, that the inclusion becomes ownership and anything that is not part of the circle becomes suspect. And in some instances, eventually becomes the enemy. And what do you do to enemies? Revile, attack, badmouth, ridicule, dismiss, blame, attack again, all the way to eliminate. But, says the article, one is not the automatic result of the other, nor does it have to be. Belonging does not require exclusivity, but it does require self-examination. Back to where I started. Christian doctrine does not require anti-Semitism. Being an atheist does not require the atheist to hate and attack the faithful, and vice versa. Some of my best friends are atheists. Inclusivity is a many-splendored thing, and it takes work. Stretching the edges of your comfort zone is backbreaking. Anything worth having, worth believing in, worth promoting takes work, takes understanding of the other, like the soccer teams, Christian and Muslim soccer teams. That's the big one. Knowledge and understanding is necessary, not blind agreement. We can't assume everyone here in this church thinks exactly like us, me individually. We shouldn't assume anything. Assume is a four-letter word. We need to lead with an open hand, not a fist, and not close down the minute we hear something new and different. I have a stepdaughter and a stepdaughter who is a born-again evangelical Jews for Jesus Christian. And I have another grandson, adopted step-grandson, who is a musician and a dedicated follower of Donald Trump. And we're still talking to each other, and we're still speaking to each other, and we're trying to hear each other. We need to lead with an open hand, not a fist, and not close down the minute we hear anything new and different from what is the norm for us. Asking real questions of someone who thinks differently than you, real questions, not gotcha questions, and hearing the answers and not just the trigger words is hard work. But it is what we signed on for. May it be so. And we have a closing hymn this morning, which I gave Tony the wrong numbers because I am famous for reversing numbers, but he got it right, and I stand corrected. The closing hymn is number 160, Far Too Long by Fear Divided. And it is, talking about stretching your thinking, a new hymn, one you're not very familiar with. So I'm going to ask Tony and the choir to sing through the first verse all the way through once, and then start back again at the first verse, and everybody join in at your comfort level. Thank you. Everybody.